Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 179 of the Peak of Serenity podcast. And I am, as always, one of your hosts, Emerson. Joining me, we have my co host, Anomoly,
Hello.
and we are back from BlizzCon and various other things that we're doing in the last week, but mostly BlizzCon.
Mostly BlizzCon.
Mostly
Yeah.
BlizzCon. Yeah, so I went to BlizzCon. I don't think you went to BlizzCon, correct?
No, I'm old and
Old,
it's
old,
far.
washed up. Yep.
It's far away. I don't like getting on planes and seeing people. So no, I was
Yeah,
not there. I
yeah,
watched everything I could,
yeah.
uh but yeah, no, I was not there in person, unfortunately.
So that was I went to BlizzCon last weekend. I was on a plane when we would normally have recorded the episode last week, and we did not move it because I was actually not on a plane back home at that point. So
Look at
we
you, little world traveler
well, I
all
went to
over the US.
Texas. I wouldn't call that world traveler.
It's like a different country down there, so
Yeah, well, they wish.
yeah, fair enough.
um, but yeah, a lot has happened in the past week. Not only did we have BlizzCon, and the kind of like there were a bunch of interviews that happened at BlizzCon, some of which did not have their notes and VODs and things posted until after BlizzCon. That's always
Yep.
fun, the kind of week after, as well as patch 10.2 released this past Tuesday. I actually just logged on this morning for the first time
Nice.
to get my get through collecting sparks and things for next week.
Oh, you mean you haven't been in the Emerald Dream farming seeds all week?
No,
God, some degen. You missed. It was a
I
patch,
missed a whole slate of bugs I saw.
a whole slate of bugs and a whole lot of degenerate behavior by
Yep.
people trying to get a augment rune a week or 2 weeks earlier than they need it. So no, it's been a fun week. I mean, I think at least for me, so I've played all the content, right? So I got a chance to jump in and play it all. If we do a quick recap of the week before we get into the BlizzCon stuff, but it's the Emerald Dream. It's a beautiful zone. It's very very pretty, but it's another formulaic like do the quests that you have, do some world quests there, farm some rep, and there's like a couple of like interesting little like tidbits and like treasures you can find and stuff like that. So there's some nice stuff, but it's very much like whatever the caverns place was.
Zaralite
What was it?
Caverns, yeah.
Is there like that landmass? Like it's very much the same there. So I will do enough to get the augment rune, which is almost all the reps. I might actually just cap out that rep. But yeah, it's just a very pretty zone. But I did not seed farm, I'll say, which was
Yeah.
just
Um,
rough.
if the raid does not give reputation, I'm probably not getting the augment rune, but that remains to be seen.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if it does, but I mean the quests are I mean it's not a bad zone. There is a new thing, maybe I'll touch on this one briefly, is they did add a like material dump quest where you basically like take a bunch of like cloth materials and things like that and you turn it into like a supply crate. And you have to turn in 5 supply crates for like a quest to give you rep and you do it once a week. And
I
so
might
like
do that.
it's
I
but
have a
it's not a
lot of
yeah.
leather.
And they do it for there's like a bunch of different ways to build the supply crate. So like the cloth is one example, but yeah, they have one for every major like gathering profession.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
a lot of mats though. It's like for one supply crate, it's like I think it's something like 150 of like 2 kinds of leather and then like some like enchanting materials mixed in there. So it's not a small amount, I'll say.
I mean,
Um,
150 is honestly not that much when you look at like I
no, that's
mean,
true, yeah.
the crafts require some of the like items that you craft require like 300.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah.
Which granted that's a like a one-time craft thing, not a
Yeah.
you don't do a whole lot of those. But yeah. Okay. I mean,
Yeah.
that might be a path for me to actually get it if the rep does not come from the raid. Like I'll show up once a week and turn in a rep quest.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's not a bad zone. I mean, I will say it suffers the only downside, and this I think is with any zone, so this would also occur in the Azure span. There's a lot of trees and a lot of overhangs, and as you're dragon riding, it can get very, very disorienting.
Yeah.
So like just getting to certain things, I was like, this is annoying.
it was honestly like the way, so this kind of plays into like the Emerald Dream element of it, right? They have a lot
Yeah.
of like big and swooping tree branches and interesting shapes and loops and things. And so that actually is kind of a nice environment for dragon riding. I did notice, like, I found myself as I was flying from one quest back to the main hub,
Yeah.
like, there's trees in the way, and weaving between the branches and things, and they're big branches, not a lot of like the little twigs that just are an unstoppable force and just
Yeah.
immediately stop you dead. But there are like the big branches that let you do some fun little like swooping below one branch through a loop in another, and you know that kind of
Yeah.
thing. So that's kind of fun.
Yeah. I'll say that is until you're trying to find a treasure hidden in a tree branch and you're
Oh
like
yeah, i
hitting every
i
tree branch
yeah.
trying to get up there. So,
So
um, but yeah, no,
yeah.
the new zone is cool. I think I mean, briefly, I have done zero prep for the raid other than like watching the VODs when they came out on PTR. So
Yeah.
like, I have to do a bunch of stuff tonight and tomorrow night. But I do have one update, non-retail related. In Classic WoW, I have defeated the normal Lich King.
Nice.
And so I'm basically done with that now. I'm not done. But we beat our guild beat normal Lich King, but we're also 9 of 12 heroic. So we're like
We're
actually
getting
crushing
up
it out
there.
pretty good. Yeah, we're top 250 on our realm. Um,
Granted,
we're-
I mean, the way that those classic servers work, that might be top 250 in your
yeah,
region.
exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think we're on Fairlina, so and also like I'm pretty sure like there's a bunch of like GDKPs that are run by like the top guilds that have like, guys have like 5, 6 alts that like have also cleared it before us. So but no, it's fun. Classic's fun. Killed Lich King, took 2 pulls, which is a lot less than it took me back when I tried to kill it and whatever was current, 2008 or something ridiculous. So yeah.
Yep. It
Making some
is
progress there.
very different.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Um,
Um, yeah, I have done less prep than I was hoping to get done, but we have raid plan diagrams mostly done. I still got to do Tindril. We are not, perks of being a weekend guild. We are not doing any Fire Act prep.
nice.
Our Fire Act prep is going to be watching other people do it on Tuesday, and then stealing whatever works. Right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it'll be
Oh
fine.
God, that's right. That's we have to actually do that. We might not get to them night one, so I'll have Wednesday night to check out stuff. But yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
So I actually, one of the things I did this morning was getting Weekora's stuff prepped. There's
nice.
no liquid pack or anything out yet. Obviously, like they'll post it when they're done.
Right.
So our week one is going to be pretty sparse, and then we'll see what they have in the liquid pack. If there's any useful assignment stuff, that was the big thing, that like there were a few different assignment things that we stole from them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I do want to, like, while I am on that subject, I don't think this is in our notes. I just want to briefly mention they killed the map Weekora.
Oh yeah. Sorry, that's not in our notes. There was so much other stuff.
Yeah, just like real brief. You can no longer see yourself on it, basically. So there's no advantage to pinning onto the world map over just like showing a static image. So those are dead.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the whole thing. I hope you didn't try and re-clear it this week. Basically,
No,
there were
we
other
haven't.
fun bugs, but also that.
No, we haven't raided. Yeah, we did not raid this week. We typically don't raid the week of content, namely because servers didn't come up till I think like 8 o'clock Tuesday night,
Yeah,
and we're not in the best of shape. And then yeah, so
and then
no,
there
we
were
didn't. We didn't
three
raid this week.
Sarkareths.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that. There's also like we have a couple of our guys have memory leaks. There's a
Oh
memory leak,
no.
and if you, I think it's like a combination of like an AMD and something else, AMD chip or like CPU and something else. But yeah, weird memory leak stuff. So yeah, it'll be fun. It'll be fun next week. So well,
Yeah.
cool. Maybe I think we've waxed poetic a little bit about last week. Maybe we get into our BlizzCon stuff.
Yeah.
So I wanted to start, and I think we agreed. I want to start with our prediction, a bit of a prediction recap, right? We
Yep.
made predictions. It's funny. Typically, we make predictions of things. I feel like we never go back and actually double check them.
We do
Um,
occasionally, but yeah, we're gonna do
occasionally,
that now.
yeah, very, very clearly. So just quick hitters. So I mean, we all said 11.0 announcement, nailed that. Like that was good. I think
Not only did we
we
get the
missed out on the
11.0,
12.
we got the 11.0, we got the 12.0, we got the 13.0.
Yeah, exactly. So we maybe missed out on the fact that we're getting two additional ones, but we nailed 11.0. We did miss on the roadmap though, so we don't have a roadmap yet for 2024. So that was one thing we did miss out on. But I think it was an Ian interview said that one is coming.
Yes.
Yeah, we missed out on that, I'll say. Then we did make some predictions about the story. Um, apparently I said Void Pirates.
Yes, you did.
I was not, and it's
Not even close.
no, not even. We're not playing the same sport at this point. With that prediction, and you had to tie into Iridicron, which I don't. I guess it would depend. I guess it's a maybe. It's a
That one
maybe.
is indeterminate. I think
Yeah.
I'm happy to call it indeterminate. It's certainly not, we can't call it a yes.
Yeah.
We could call it a no. We have no indication that the Iridicron is involved, other than I think there's two like kind of loose connections. So the War Within, we're going underground. Obviously, Iridicron is like the Earth Primal.
Hmm.
And then the second expansion that was announced is Void themed.
Yeah.
And there
Same thing.
are hints of Void stuff in what we know about the next expansion. So there's like room for Iridicron to make appearances and be involved, but we have no indication that he actually is, right?
Yeah.
There is still room basically for him to get wrapped up. One of the other announcements that we got, there's going to be 3 more content patches before 11.0, and what they mean by that is like 10.1.5 was a content patch. It came with
Yeah.
new events, new zones, new stores, stuff. That's the kind of thing that they mean by that. So we are gonna potentially have room to wrap up Iridicron during
Mhm.
those. In potentially some dungeon content, something smaller scale that is not as involved as a full raid tier.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So topic wise, didn't really nail it. Our next piece was we did talk about a 10.2.5 announcement, which we didn't get at the BlizzCon ceremony, well, on like the ceremony on the main stage, but we did get it in interviews. So 10.2.5 is coming, and it will feature a faded like mechanic, including Dinar coming back,
Yep.
which is cool. I think we bunch of feedback on like what exactly faded means. I just hope they're not bad affixes or like it's just not affixes at all. It's just like the fights are just like easier and we just get to blast them for like, a couple months. So,
Yeah. Honestly.
um but yeah, was surprised though that we're getting a 10.2.7, which essentially is like that. You just mentioned the 3 content patches. So that I think that was 10.2 base, which came out last week, 10.2.5, and then a 10.2.7. So before we get 11.0. So got some stuff rolling out here. Our next set of predictions were on the 11.0 systems. So what we thought would come in from like a systems point of view. So this is sort of expansion level systems. So the first one was basically, I think was expanding the event system to replace World Quest and dailies.
You were
So
actually like super close on this.
so they talked about Delve being like the new. So basically, they talked a lot about adding more to the open world to give a progression pathway to open world players. And so this is like we'll talk about this in more detail, but to me, this is Delves, and this also the whole Great Vault changing slightly in terms of
Yeah.
like
Yep.
rewards. And so I don't think they're getting rid of World Quests or dailies per se, but Delve is becoming, I think, a larger component and sort of it. They basically talked about it as a system of them expanding on like Super Bloom events in this patch or the what are the Emerald Dream things in 10 the previous patch. Dream
Dream
surges.
surges. There we go. Yeah, we got there.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so yeah, I was surprised how close I was.
Yeah, yeah. I had not remembered how close you actually were on that prediction.
Yeah,
Let's shuffle this list a little bit, and we'll talk about the talent
yeah,
stuff at the end because I think it's
yeah,
it's useful to,
yeah.
to do that. Dragon riding in the old world actually technically wrong
That's
because it's
true.
not an 11.0 system. It is in fact coming before 11.0. We are getting dragon riding in old zones. Still unlikely to be Isle of Quel'Danas, whatever. What's the where the Exodar is? Blood Mist
Oh
Isle,
yeah,
those
Blood Mist.
zones,
Yeah,
the old ones that are like portaled off from the
yeah,
main
like hits
continent.
itself from everything. Yeah.
Yeah. So, however, I'm excited about this. I want to just mention it. They did actually specifically say those are going to get as part of next expansion,
Hmm.
kind of rejoined onto the contents that they are not technically, but in terms of lore, are connected to. So we
Yeah,
will be able to Dragon Ride actually everywhere
that'll be
in
awesome.
11.0. So
Yeah, it'd be cool to fly over. Like I'm excited. So the two places I'm excited to Dragon Ride are actually like Darnassus or like the World Tree there. I think would be
yeah,
pretty cool. And then also Silver Moon City. Yeah, would be like the two that are high on
I'm
my list. But yeah,
I'm curious what they're going to do with Silver Moon City. That's going to be a
yeah,
cool one to see. It's part of the story for the next expansion, so it is going to actually get updates, and so we will see what the updates look like. Because wow, does it show its age?
yeah. I mean, it's funny having leveled a little bit there, like in terms of like leveling even right now,
Yeah,
in Wrath Classic, like it's very much like you can tell it's built like the old Stormwind is, which is like a lot of facades, like just a lot of like
yeah,
very tall walls, so you can kind of like you can't really see over the top of it or go over the top of it. So I'm assuming it looks like the old,
yeah,
like where Stormwind Keep was literally just like a 1 pixel like texture.
yeah.
In the original game. So before you could fly over it. But
Yep.
no, yeah, it's exciting. Like drag. I guess what are they calling it? Is it like
Dynamic
advanced
flight,
dynamic flight? Dynamic
Yeah.
flight. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's super exciting.
Yeah.
But then we get to talents, which is our other 11.0 system, and we both missed in different ways. I think I
Yeah.
wasn't sure how they were going to do it. I was like, we're getting more talents. I don't know how. I know they don't want to do rows, but that's the only thing I can think of. So I said talent tree rows with more points.
Yeah.
And I think you were like empowered nodes in talent trees.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
And neither of those is right. What we actually got was hero talents, which is this secondary, well, I guess tertiary. It's like a third talent tree, a little mini talent tree in the middle,
Yeah.
that you fill out the whole thing over the course of leveling. And then at the end game, you have the ability to switch between hero talent options. Like there's different
Yep.
sub trees basically you can pick from, almost like subclasses. And then you also have the ability, like there are 4 choice nodes in each of them. So it also sort of functions like the old talent system, the
Like the
like
MOP
6 rows of 3 talents, except it's 4 rows of 2 talents.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's it's kind of neat. We're gonna
Wait.
see. There's a lot of like flavor tied into these. One of the big things from BlizzCon was them showing off animation changes
Yeah.
for this. So
Which
going to
I'm
be
never gonna
exciting to
say.
see what we get. Yeah,
I don't care about animation changes.
I do.
No. Oh God, no.
Uh,
Here's my problem with animations in general is Essence Font, gorgeous spell. It's oh God, I can't even say it's shit anymore because we cast it now. Fuck. It should be removed from the game. But in any event, it looks beautiful. It's just a bad spell.
yeah, I
So
mean,
I'm just
Brewmaster, like monk animations still look really good kind of across the
yeah,
board. It's still really annoying that none of them use your weapon, basically. We used to
yeah,
have like if you use the Brewmaster artifact, there's a few that will use that. But basically none of them use your weapons, which is kind of frustrating sometimes. I miss the old like mop era jab versus I don't remember what the other one. It was like jab and some kind of weapon strike, and it would just switch based
yeah.
on what weapons you had equipped, and it would do a different animation, and that was really cool. I want that, please, Blizzard.
Different animations. That's
Yeah.
fair.
Um.
Um, so
Next
this next one was
other
yours, actually. This was
Yeah,
yours.
I said raid content current over the life of an expansion, kind of in the Wrath Classic mold, where you have this progression path, and if you level a new character, you want to go and you can do like Nax 10 and get gear that will help set you up to jump into like their Titan Rune dungeons, to help you jump into like you can go into Ulduar, and like not only are people still running it, but the gear is still relevant. Do Ulduar
Hmm.
10, get gear to help you get into ICC, and then you can do ICC. So you still have these old zones, and they are still relevant. Uh, no word on that for
Yeah.
retail, which disappoints me. The closest thing we're going to get, which I don't think counts, I'm happy to call this a miss, is Faded, right? Where we know
Yeah.
that's coming back, which is like kind of sort of this, but not this.
Not over like the entire expansion, because
Yeah,
your thing is
yeah,
like you do this over the entire expansion. Where
yeah,
Faded seems to be like their final tier of not having to do, in our case, whatever the current Amdrasil for like 9 months, right?
yeah.
While we wait for the next expansion now.
Yep.
So our next prediction was Classic Plus. And so I think you talking about an alt expansion, like basically like another expansion for Classic, so like not Burning Crusade, but like something different, like expansion wise.
Built
Um,
on Specifically built on Vanilla WoW,
yeah,
and my idea was focusing more on the elemental stuff that goes unresolved from Classic WoW.
yeah,
Um, and I would personally I would call this like a half because we didn't get an expansion, but we did get
that's true.
Season of Discovery, which has new raids for Classic, new systems for Classic, and it is built on the vanilla stuff. And well, the elemental thing remains to be seen.
That's fair.
Say,
Yeah, and I think and my thing was like not a full expansion, but just like an expansion on really not like an expansion like we traditionally see them, but like
right?
expanding on existing content in the game, which I think we
I
both
think
were close
I
here,
think that's
right?
actually pretty spot on. The
Yeah.
runes that are going to be in Season of Discovery are predominantly out in the world, from what they said. Uh, so that seems accurate. I think you kind of
Yeah.
nailed that one.
Yeah, I
It's
should
a
just
lot
become
closer
a
than
Blizzard
mine.
designer. Just become a Blizzard designer at this point. Now, I mean, and like I said, I think we talked about this a little bit in the pre-show. I'm really excited about this season of Discovery.
Yeah.
I've purposely read nothing about where to find these runes. I know that like I
Well,
read.
nobody knows.
Well, I mean, WoWhead's like been data mining stuff. Like, come on, come on.
Hell,
You know that
yeah. All
you
right.
know they're out there. You
Yeah.
know they're
Fair
out
enough.
there.
All right.
But yeah, no, it's I think it's cool. I will say one just on this point because I don't think we'll talk about this in detail. The guy, or I'm not gonna say the guy, the developer of Questy actually came out and made a post and was like, I'm not putting in rune locations in Questy. So like they were basically like, I'll do all the new like quests and all that, set up Questy to do that stuff, but they were like, I'm not gonna put rune locations in Questy, which I think is like a cool like community thing of like
Yeah.
keep it discoverable.
I don't know how much we're going to talk about it. There was a demo of the Black Fathom Deep's 10-player raid that is going to
Oh,
be the level 25 raid in Season of Discovery. You could play that at BlizzCon. We had 9 people from my guild plus one friend of the guild. So we actually went into the guild raid of Black Fathom Deeps.
oh, really? That's all.
Uh,
Was it fun? Was it like interesting?
it's the kind of thing that I would not want, like, it was a fun experience. Like I had a good time playing it with them. It's not a repeatable experience. I don't personally think. I like. Uh, it's classic. It's a leveling done raid, but it's still
Yeah,
like classic tier like boss mechanics where the boss has like 1 or 2 mechanics and you just like it's extremely simple. Um,
yeah.
so, but it was fun to do with people. We had a rogue tank and an enhancement shaman tank and a mage healer,
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
so that was just tons of fun.
That's super cool. Yeah, I don't know. Like I said in the pre-show, I don't know if I'll actually play Season of Discovery. I'll probably load up a character, pick something
Yeah,
randomly, right, and sort of mess around. But I don't think I'll do it with any serious thing. But I think it's super cool that like essentially Blizzard now has it, like, to be fair, like 2 games under development. Like
yeah,
you have retail and now you have this, like, which I think is really cool. So
yeah. Speaking of
um
games under development, we also I think this was the freest one besides the
yeah,
11.0 announcement. We're
100%.
getting Cataclysm Classic. Um,
Woo!
we have some news about things they're going to bring forward. I don't want to spend too much time on it because it's still
Yeah.
there's still a lot of gray in kind of what they
Yeah.
said. But we do know that it sounds like they're going to bring forward the Titan Rune dungeon system that they
Yep.
currently have in in Wrath Classic to kind of keep dungeons relevant over the course of the expansion. We are going to see a much faster release schedule, which I think is par for the course in Classic
Yeah.
these days. But in particular, they made a note of like your troll dungeons are not going to be like a 4 or 5 month content patch.
Yeah.
Um, it might have actually
Just
been longer than that in the original Classic. I don't remember, but it was. You got your 3 raids, then you got troll dungeons,
yep.
and then it was, or was it Firelands or Fortress? Either way, it was a long time.
Yeah, there was Firelands and then Troll Dungeons and
Yeah,
then yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Which will be which I'm super stoked for classic Cat because that was I will tell it for me personally, this is the one expansion that I took the most amount of breaks or didn't really play it as much.
yeah.
Um I think at the time I was traveling for work and doing that stuff. But yeah, this is the one expansion where I spent like the least amount of time actually in the game, I'll say. So
I think this is gonna be an interesting one for me. I want to go back and try the leveling again and see how it
yeah.
holds up to my memory of it, because I don't recall it being as bad at this point as it became in later ones. Outside of a couple of outliers like Marksmanship Hunter, aimed
Yep.
shot being like one shot basically for free. You just picked marksmanship and could just you won every open world encounter.
Yeah.
Um, but it is going to be interesting. In some ways, it's actually kind of ironic that I think it's the fact that it remakes the world as a turnoff for a bunch of people.
Yeah. Which is funny because it's the world we've had the longest at this point, right?
Yeah,
Like, yeah, yeah, and I mean, we'll see. Like, I'll definitely at least level and test it out because I have a bunch of it. Like for me, I leveled before I started this new job, so like my leveling experience was like me and like six of my buddies staying up all night. One of them
yeah,
being like, "I'm gonna drink a bunch of Red Bull and smoke a pack of cigarettes. I'll be fine." And literally at like what was level cap 80, like
yeah.
level 79, he passed out his computer and like doesn't wake up for like 12 hours.
Oh my god.
So like I have a ton of like older memories about at least the leveling part of it, but yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, I think I
I
only killed Neff and that was it, like the opening raid. So
yeah, I am excited about the doing the Kata zones again. Like obviously you can do them in current WoW, but it's just a different experience doing it when they are kind of the current zones.
yeah,
So I'm excited about doing that. I will probably. I don't know if I will boost or if I will actually finish leveling my rogue.
yeah, we'll see. Depending on when it comes out, I might actually boost up a third character because I'm enjoying like the laid back like. It's nice when number one I'm not a healer in these raids, and number two I have zero like I'm just a raider. Like
Yeah,
I don't have any responsibility outside of just like showing up and making sure I have enough flasks to last us the night, right? So,
yeah,
um, but cool, yeah. I think those are all of our predictions. So I mean, I think we did fairly well. I mean, we missed I think pretty heavily on the topic issue,
yeah,
missed pretty heavily on talents, but I
yep,
think the rest of them were close. We're close.
yeah.
Um, so cool. Well, let's actually talk about what was talked about at BlizzCon. And so I think maybe we'll start this with like, hey, major announcement stuff from the ceremony, and then we can get into some of like the new systems we know are coming with 11.0 and those areas. So, so huge announcements, Blizzard or BlizzCon, I'm sorry, main stage stuff was super hyped. They of course announced 11.0, the cinematic. Honestly, honest to God, like I watched after that cinematic, I went on YouTube and was like, there's a YouTube video. I think it's like probably 6 or 7 hours long, but it's every WoW cinematic in like
Yeah,
chronological order. I started watching it because I'm like, they like Taryn Gregory and maybe it's not only him, but that cinematics team at WoW has been good since the start. I realized, like even before
yeah,
Taryn got there, because he did like all the Wrathgate stuff. That's where he got. I think he started around that area. But even like the TBC stuff and like even the original classic cinematics, so good. So now the cinematic was great. Tons of it's Anduin and Thrall. Tons of callbacks to like the Lich King, which I think is that whole theme of like the war within. I think Anduin's fighting a bunch of demons inside of him, but there was a lot of like parallels to like Lich King and him potentially trying to battle the demons of what he did while he was under Dominion magic. But no, yeah, we get to go back and mess around with the sword, which is funny to me. So thinking about it, just maybe this isn't how it's supposed to work out, or maybe this is all how it's supposed to work out. But it's funny to me that Metzin's last big story beat he did was the end of Legion,
yeah,
right? And so we are essentially picking up from how Legion ended with like this new like with the next expansion, essentially like trying to understand what the sword was, what they were trying to stab, and all that fun stuff. Um, and Metzin's back for this. Wasn't
yes.
here for BFA, wasn't here for Shadowlands, wasn't here for Dragonflight, but he's back now. So I think
That's
maybe he's like these last three expansions in the bin with the story. We're all about this picking up where we left off in Legion. So
there. There is also like he talked about how much discussion they had about the story, where they were going to go, what they were going to do, and honestly, like, so Dragonflight's kind of a break in the story from where things were with the previous expansions. It's totally
Hmm.
different. It's isolated, and part of me wonders if we are going to see Eridicron uh, kind of get wrapped up during
Yeah.
the rest of this expansion, just so they can start fresh. But at the same time, there are enough connections to what they talked about for the War Within that I could see him kind of being a bit player throughout the next expansions. But it was interesting how heavily the what was done to Anduin during Shadowlands, which is probably like maybe the only really good
Yeah.
story beat from Shadowlands. Um, how much of a thing that was. Like, that's what the cinematic is about. Anduin is sitting
Yeah.
there on a rock in the desert staring at the sword and coming to terms with the fact that he hurt and killed people while he was, mind controlled.
Exactly.
And so that's that's actually a very like comic book esque
Yeah.
storyline, right? Like, think of like the Winter Soldier or something from Marvel Comics,
Hmm.
kind of that same deal. Um, but it was a very different cinematic. It was a very kind of quiet, story driven,
Oh
not
yeah.
like, you know, if you look back at like the Legion one is like
A
very
huge battle.
action packed. It's rule of cool, just adrenaline start to finish, very exciting. This was a like it's not the Final Fantasy announcement one, but it's I would not be surprised to see a cinematic like this appear during questing in like Final Fantasy 14, right? Like this
Yeah.
is and it's going to be interesting to see where they go. Um and see how the story progresses. It's in some ways kind of feels like they might be setting up a Scions of the Seventh Dawn. For those of you that play Final Fantasy, you'll know what that means. Kind of like the group of characters that the player adventures with that have the adventure and offer commentary and have these experiences and can be a voice for the
Yeah.
player. So it'll be interesting to see how that all that works out.
Yeah. No, yeah, it was I mean it was really definitely like you said a huge change of pace, I think. Even from Dragonflight. I think
Yeah,
Dragonflight wasn't as action pacty, right? Like
yeah.
as Legion or even Shadowlands was, but I think it yeah, I don't know. To me WoW is always best when you have a character that you care about. And I think like this cinematic did a very good job of making me want to care about Anduin.
Yeah.
Like I would say like to be fair, like this did more for me understanding his struggle than all of Shadowlands
Oh
did.
yeah.
Like right, like the
Absolutely.
way that Shadowlands like I knew he was mind controlled. I knew he probably didn't want to do it, but like even the cutscenes like between the different patches are like didn't even the final like the way the story wrapped up in Shadowlands like didn't lend itself to like this much of an internal struggle he had, right? All we knew
Yeah.
was like Anduin was going away to follow Sylvanas, and like Sylvanas had to stay in the mall because that was her punishment, right? And it's just like you don't, yeah, you don't get that there was some sort of struggle with him, right? Other than they just didn't know how to end it, right? Like that's
Yeah.
sort of what I got out of it.
And
So
it is kind of funny as well. Like, was talking to somebody that's like familiar-ish with Shadowlands. Like, they didn't play it,
yeah,
but they were adjacent to people who were playing it, and like they knew Anduin was a raid boss,
yeah.
and we're like, what the hell happened to Anduin? When they watched this cinematic, that was their reaction: is what the hell happened to Anduin?
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, he's been through some shit. And like now you're like, oh yeah, now I get it. Like, right? Like it makes
Yeah,
sense. But none of that to me. I mean, I think you're supposed to infer it, right? Like based on just who Anduin was and things like that. But
yeah,
it's there is sort of something different when they like get to show it in the cinematic. So no, it was really well done. But yeah, I think and then following on, so go and watch cinematic. I guess that's the big thing. It's freaking amazing.
yeah,
But going on from this, they then not only announced the War Within, which is 11.0, but they also announced the next two expansions, basically calling this the Worldsoul Saga. And so we have the War Within as 11.0, we have Midnight as 12.0, or the second expansion in this trio, and then we have the Last Titan is as the name of the final expansion, which sort of gives sort of the a little bit of of the where the story's going, right? So like this expansion is all about diving into the center of Azeroth, understanding exactly what Sargeras was trying to stab with that sword, whether it was a Worldsoul or something else, right?
Yeah.
And then, it sounds like Midnight will be very much the Voidy expansion, so we get some Void Lords type stuff coming on. So maybe some things around like corrupting or manipulating characters around what to do with the Worldsoul. And the last Titan, like, I don't know, that just, I mean, that could be anything, right? Like that could be
So
like
there's a few different ways you could read that, right? Like it could be
yeah,
like the death of the Titans, the other Titans. It
yeah,
could be that like Azeroth is the final Titan to be born. It could be like I don't know.
yeah,
Like
like tons of stuff. Yeah.
yeah.
But
There
it
is
gets to
also
me. Sorry.
oh, I just wanted to like
Yeah.
Metzen dropped in there like basically the Razageth, you think the Titans brought order to this world uh thing that we will see how that gets paid off basically. Like is there
Yeah.
supposed to be this like the Titans are not who we think, or is there like is that just like baiting people basically?
Yeah. Yeah, no, yeah. I think to me this is the part of WoW lore that I think is the coolest, right? Like I think the just the Titans in general and like that part of the lore to me is always I think much more interesting than I mean the old gods, I guess it's really all the original lore, right? The old gods, the Titans, like stuff
Yeah.
like that. Where like I feel like a lot of the
The
new
one
stuff they
thing
brought
missing
into
is
WoW.
the elementals, and that's like the only
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like we've killed them too much, but maybe they'll bring them back once again.
This has been kind of
Um,
a very elemental expansion, so
yeah, that's true. That's true. But no, I think yeah. So we get the next three expansions. Or we get three. Yeah, the next three expansions announced at least in name. Um, so that's really cool. And yeah, we know the sort of the next part of the story, which I think will help set up WoW because they talked a lot about this also. Is like are they releasing expansions too quickly? Right? Like are have we sped up to the point of we're going to get a new expansion probably, 2 years, right? Which is what to be fair Ghostcrawler said back in like I think like
like
in
after
Blot or
Cataclysm,
something that yeah, like after Cat they were like we'll hit an expansion every 2 years.
and then they failed
Um
every single time. Honestly,
exactly.
actually, the first time they actually succeeded was Shadowlands.
Yeah,
Not
which
counting
is
like Warlords actually just having one raid patch, right? Like that
yeah.
had Eyeball. Oh, I guess it had Blackrock Foundry,
Yeah, and then
and
yeah.
then Hellfire Citadel,
Yeah. But yeah,
and
no, it's
it just wasn't.
wasn't there. Yeah, no, they did yeah, I mean, so they did talk a little about that, like the speed at which this is coming out, but I think it's nice to know the next three, which I think does two things. Number one, it allows them to, I think, get through that content quicker because they've said these are the three things we're going to hit. And so I don't think people will feel the people won't like it, but I think in general people feel a little bit more understanding of okay, we have these story beats they want to hit inside of these expansions, and this is how they're laying it out. And I think too, the other nice part about this is you're invested, right? Like I am now like if I play the War Within and I enjoy the starting story, I know where I'm going, so I'm now invested to basically make it through, right?
Yeah,
Like it's very much the Destiny syndrome, like where Destiny had this 10-year plan, right? And people are kind of playing maybe not so much anymore, but to see the end of that story. And I think very much too as like the way that Lich King is sort of what many people consider like the end of classic or like original Warcraft, right? Is
yeah.
like Lich King was the big bad that we had started with in War 3 and the RTS games and then like sort of followed through. So I think in this sort of helps them maybe keep people more invested, I'll say, from like a story and that point of view versus just like, hey, we have a new expansion there. We're going to this new world and it's this cool thing, right? Like they now have sort of a long-term pathway of taking us. So
I
I
do
don't know.
think that there is also the element of like Shadowlands doing serious damage to
Oh
how
yeah.
much people care about the lore and the story. Um, like getting to the end of this, like the jailer's the mastermind behind it all. Just complete fucking nonsense, right?
Exactly.
And it's
Yeah.
just like if this is the way they're going, then I just won't care, right? Like
Yeah.
we were doing like lore corner and stuff like that and patch recaps and all this stuff, and just like we haven't done one since basically.
Because it got too convoluted, and I'd be like, I think it's number one. I tried to get into the lore of like maybe I picked the wrong expansion to try to get into the
Yeah,
lore. I'll say,
yeah,
right, but yeah, no, it was just it got to the point where like that jailer, no, where they were like, oh, he is like a hand in everything. He's the reason like dreadlords exist or whatever. I don't even know if they said that, but to me, that's what I read into. Right, it's just like, yeah, too much for me.
yeah.
So
So that was. Shadowlands did a lot of damage. I think there's also maybe, well, I hope that there's kind of a recognition that the way they currently deliver story is not the greatest at actually communicating story.
Hmm.
We will see. Like, I think they have done better in Dragonflight, but at the same time, like, I definitely just zoned out for a bunch of the, like, go here, kill X quests in Amir Jasil this morning.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the problem too is like this is, and this might be my issue with some of the new content too, is like I did Zaralek Caverns like twice because I needed things for the ring,
Yeah.
right? That was the ring thing.
No, that was the
Like,
other zone.
oh, okay, whatever that other zone was.
Yeah.
So whatever that was, I did that maybe 2 or 3 times. Never really explored the island beyond getting like the dragon riding tokens. And so like I think they do need a better. I think in the future, like they do a very good job of setting up the expansion, but then continuing the story in the expansion.
Yeah.
I think they need to, and this is probably the hard part. Is like they need to mix in more story-driven cinematics, like they do with the opening,
Yeah.
right? Like not
And
the in-game stuff, but like the actual like
yeah, I mean,
out-of-game cinematics.
I guess I will note that there are actually quite a few like in-game cinematics during the questing experience today, and that's like where you like basically are communicated that like you should sit up and pay
Yeah,
attention to this. This is a major story beat that's happening. We invested time in this voice-acted cinematic, and you
yeah,
know,
that's true. Maybe I should start watching those.
those are there.
Yeah,
So that's kind of nice. Well, we'll see. We will
yeah,
see. The other thing, so we're moving on a little bit towards the what's next panel that they did. I want to make a note. We're not going to talk about BlizzCon like structurally, like what went on at BlizzCon and the issues with
yeah,
BlizzCon and the lines and the everything. There were not very many panels. That's the extent of what I'll say. That
yeah,
normally when there's a BlizzCon, we have like panels and panels and panels, and we have like 4 months of podcasts to do.
yeah,
Basically, we have 2 panels. So
yeah, for a while.
we're gonna do 2 panels. uh, um, and so the what's next focused on more of like the lore and the story and the less on the systems. I think
Yeah,
they we'll talk about the deep dive that does go into more of the systems. But one of the things I wanted to bring up for that is that when they did the what's next, this kind of goes back to what I said about the science of the Seventh Dawn. They actually
yeah.
highlighted, Anduin, Thrall, Magni, Ilaria
Oh yeah.
as being people that are going to be major players, characters that are going to be major players during uh, the next 3 expansions. And that's kind of like one of the strengths of the Final Fantasy storytelling is that you actually have had like 6 of the same characters that have carried from A Realm Reborn, which is when they relaunched the game after the disaster that was like version 1.0, uh,
Hmm.
all the way through to the current expansions. And so they've actually like you get to see how they've changed, and so we get hints of that with the cinematic with Anduin and Thrall. And so there's
Yeah,
they may be moving in that direction because it works.
yeah, which is good. Yeah, and I will say, like, I think at the time when they killed off, who was it? Bane, right? Or not Bane. He was the original Tauren leader, right?
Yeah, in
Yeah. So when they
Bloodhoof,
killed off,
yeah.
yeah, Bane, and then they also killed off
Or was it
the
Kieran that was his? One's the son,
the
one's the father. I don't
Kieran.
remember which is which.
Yeah, I think Kieran's the original, and then they also killed off the troll guy, um
Zul'jin. No, not
Zul'jin,
Vol'jin. Vol'jin. There
not
we go.
Vol'jin. Like I applauded them at the time because I'm like, if you kill off a major lore character, like like it's a very Game of Thrones esque thing. I think the problem is they never replace those characters with like
Yes.
the same level, and I think that's the thing that they have to do moving forward. Is it's cool to have the same band of like like basically characters you're following and adventuring with, right? But I think for me story wise, it's always not that they have to kill off somebody every expansion, but like
Right.
the problem is like when Thrall eventually is not like the 1,000-year-old orc, right? Like eventually they should get rid of Thrall, I think. As wild as that sounds, but like they have to have a character that can slide in and be the next Thrall. And I think
Yeah.
that's got to be they have to set that up before they basically kill off the character, which I don't think they did with Vol'jin, and I don't think they did with Karn,
Yeah.
right? Like I think Bane now sort of fits on their own, but yeah.
Yeah, and there's also things like if you look back at the structure of the past like 4 expansions, right? Like who are you supposed to care about for this expansion for Dragonflight? Like
Yeah.
it is kind of like a one-off. Like we're going to have adventures, and it's fine. That's fine as a standalone. But you look at like the previous ones, and it's like, who are you supposed to like the BFA Shadowlands and to an extent Legion was like the Sylvanas show, and Sylvanas
Right.
was the villain, right?
Yeah, at the end, yeah. Which was a great like if they would have had supporting characters on the Horde side behind her, I think
Yeah,
that would have been a great turn.
yeah.
Right? Like similar, I
But
mean
all of
like
the
they
supporting
they
characters they had were like a patch long, right? You
yeah.
remember like we had Princess Talanchi in
Yeah.
BFA that like there's stuff there. And they just didn't go anywhere with it. Princess Talanji was like part of the base content patch and then showed up once or twice the rest of the expansion and it was completely forgotten about. And
Yeah.
it is hard to get invested in characters that you just like kind of can assume that pretty much any character you see in World of Warcraft is not going to be a long term.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, but they've done it. I mean, they did it with Hellscream, with Garrosh
Yeah.
and Siege of Orgrimmar, right? Like they did that whole good guy turned villain. Although I don't know if Garrosh was ever really a true good guy, but you know what I
Yeah.
mean. But like,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how the story goes. But I'm at least excited that we've got these next sort of three expansions mapped out. We have a. It seems like we have a overarching story arc to connect the three, which
Yeah.
hopefully should be fun. So. All right. Well, we've talked about the story a ton, and
Yeah.
we don't have too much time, at least to get through. So I don't want to rush the next up, but I did want maybe we talk a little bit about warbands and talents if we can get to it. But talk a
Yeah.
little bit because I think
We
warbands,
don't have a lot
I think
of
is
knowledge about talents as well. I think we can
yeah,
fit talents in.
yeah. So one of the major, I'll say 11.0 expansion features they announced was warbands, which is essentially, to be fair, is like a count-wide progression is like the best way to describe it. Essentially, like all of your characters contribute to a now account progression, right? So like you can, like for example, renowned, I think will be shared across all of your characters. You no longer have to farm renowned on your main and then your alt, right? You'll have a warband bank where you can place things in your bank like reagents and then craft across characters.
Similar to
Uh,
the if like any basically any ARPG, like you have a shared stash.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And so there's that. There's also so we talked about like yeah, like renowned or like reputation progression. They're also adding in what they're calling warband gear, which seems to function much like the trinkets from Garrosh. Remember the
Yeah,
heirloom trinkets,
yeah.
where it's like an additional like drop from killing something. And it basically is called a warband item, or it's warband
Warbound.
bound. Yeah,
I think
warbound
is
is
it.
that?
I don't
I don't
have
know
it
how
pulled up
they
in front of
named
me.
it.
I thought it was called Warbound, like as a kind of parallel to Soulbound.
Yeah,
Um, the way that these work, from what we've been told so far, is like you said, they're extra push personal loot. They can come from. We don't have any dungeon journals or anything for the next expansion, so we don't know if it's going to be like any raid boss can drop any like warbound item and you can put it in your stash and take it out by one of your alts,
hmm
and that kind of thing. Um, but I think it's safe to assume they won't be tradable. Like you just get it, and it's supposed to be a thing for
yeah,
your alt, and you just like throw it in your stash and use it for your second, third, whatever character.
yeah.
Um, and once you use it, it is soulbound.
Then it's soulbound. Yeah,
So there's not
yeah,
going to be this thing of like building up a mail set, using it for your shaman, then transferring the whole thing en masse to your hunter,
right.
um, that kind of deal. But it is actually, I think, pretty interesting as a way of trying to. I'm gonna keep coming back to Final Fantasy because they keep doing it. They just keep doing it. When you do dungeon content, especially in Final Fantasy 14, you
hmm
will be able to get items that your current job, your class, cannot use. And other people may not be able to use it anymore. They may not want it. They may have upgraded it. Like
Yeah,
you might get a white mage item that the white mage in your group is like, I've already got a better one.
yeah,
And so you can then like get it on a greed roll. And when you switch jobs to white mage, now you can use it. And it's just not a super high island level piece, but it's better than nothing.
right. I think that was the thing because like very much. You made the like the shared stash with ARPG sort of example, and like that's something that has happened to me before, like playing like PoE or even Diablo 3,
Yeah,
of like getting a drop for a different class I'm not playing and being like, this is a really good legendary or really good
yeah,
artifact, right? Maybe I'll roll up a sorceress now because I got like the best
yeah.
sorceress like item for that thing. And I think that's sort of the cool thing about this is like it basically alleviates to me the worst part about playing an alt, which is doing a bunch of the monotonous thing before I get to play the game,
You get
right?
stuck in that. There's that gap between
Of
world
like yeah,
content, like and mythic, like, or mythic plus dungeon, mythic dungeon even. Sometimes even
yeah.
like, oh, getting into a heroic dungeon is a fresh level 70, or a
Oh
few
yeah.
pieces of like getting just a handful of warbound gear suddenly means that, like, hey, you can just log in, you can throw on your warbound gear, you can queue up for heroic dungeons, and you could just like go and play the game.
Exactly. Yeah, it's that sort of like intermediary thing of like the monotonous grind for like certain things. And they also talked to I don't think they I don't know if they brought this up, but I believe someone asked a question, maybe it was on like currency and warbounds, right? So like how will like the crest system work? I don't know if we ever got an answer for that, but I think the answer that they were giving just about the idea of like, do you now need to have a bunch of alts to be competitive, was like essentially like the answer there was like their answer is no, right?
Yeah,
They don't want this to turn into like a Lost Ark situation, which if you didn't play that game, like you basically played your alts to funnel resources for your main to be better, and
yeah.
like they basically don't want war bands to be that.
And
So
I think one of the reasons that this is like one of the reasons they're presenting it as warbands is so they can call it an expansion feature. Like, yeah, that's like the cynical way to look at it. But also, I think this kind of terminology makes it a little bit easier to explain what is and is not account wide.
yeah,
Because I basically expect like crests, high level stuff, like that kind of, or high eye level stuff, is
hmm,
gonna not be warbound,
right,
and they can communicate, I think, a little bit more cleanly than trying to slam like battle.net account bound on
yeah,
everything. Uh,
exactly,
it's a little
yeah,
bit less awkward.
because I think they even talked about like the 1% titles won't be warbound type things, right? That you'll get that on the character, but like portals, so like doing
Dungeon
timing 20s,
portals.
dungeon portals will be a war band wide.
I
We have
have
to
a
think of a better word
bunch
for
of the
that.
ones from season four on my mage that I did not go back and get on my monk, and
Yeah.
so that'll be nice to have those. Um, Maybe this will finally fix. We have a person in our guild that did all of the raiding with us in season four and somehow managed to not get the portals, the raid portals. They have the
Nice.
achievement, so they're supposed to grant it, and they just don't have the portals. And the customer support at Blizzard was not very helpful.
That's fair. That's fair.
Um, and maybe this will finally fix that. Maybe it'll you know prod poke the right things to be like, you actually have all the things. This is now a warbound raid portal, and now you have it.
Yeah, exactly.
One can hope.
Exactly.
One can hope.
Yep.
So that's cool. One last thing about that, people have been talking a lot about basically account bound reputations for this. The
Hmm.
announcement, this got buried in all the excitement about it. The announcement is that the reputations are announced in the War Within are going to be warbound.
Yeah.
Your warband is what counts for them, not all old reputations, but they were working on that.
Yeah.
And so I just want to bring that up for two reasons. One, don't get too excited, and two, with how, like, do you remember before the launch of Dragonflight, they were like, we are working on cross faction guilds, like,
Yeah.
we've done cross faction groups, we are working on cross faction guilds, and there was skepticism, including from me, about when we were going to get that,
Right. Yeah.
and basically whether we were going to get that in a realistic time frame. And they did deliver on it. Like, we have cross realm guilds, they work, they're great. So did I say cross realm, cross faction?
Yeah. Cross section. Yeah.
Spoilers though, because cross realm guilds and raiding next expansion with the
Fully
release
unlocked.
patch, which also means that the barrier, like the Hall of Fame kind of trigger of turning on cross realm mythic, is going away as well. Cross realm mythic from day one. I am curious what that will end up doing to people's pug experiences for Mythic. If that means that we will see people pug further into Mythic, because like at the launch, basically when everybody's there, you'll have
Oh yeah.
Mythic available.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. I think yeah, the cross like this to me is Blizzard essentially setting up for a long tail on WoW, meaning like the idea where like most I feel like MMOs die is when you don't have enough players in a like enough concentration of players,
Yeah,
right? And so by working on this feature now, essentially they can say we can keep all 200 realm servers we have up and running.
yeah,
It doesn't matter because you can cross realm any of the actual like
everything.
higher level
Guilds,
content you want.
Mythic. There's
Yeah.
literally nothing anymore. The auction house, I guess the only thing that still applies is like crafting orders, basically,
Yeah.
are
Yeah,
on
the
your
work
realm.
orders.
And who knows? We did not get any information about crafting other than yes, there will be more crafting.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so that could be changing too. You never know.
Yeah. So yeah. So I mean that was I think the other part of Warbands is like yeah also the idea that your alts can be anywhere, right? So like not
Yeah,
only are your and still be like in the same guild, still potentially do like similar content, which I think is I don't know I think it's awesome. Like I think that's been the biggest struggle, not struggle, but like for me and some of my friends when like whenever because I'm the only person who actually plays WoW with any consistency. Like when they want
yeah,
to come back, it's always like, what server are you on now? Oh, last time we played Alliance, and like, great, now I have to like re-level something up or cross,
yeah,
like transfer something, and so like now it's yeah, just play with whoever you want, which I think
yeah.
is really
And
cool. So
and that's I guess maybe we don't talk about talents. I do think that the
yeah,
cross realm stuff is actually like really important for guilds that get kind of caught in this gap between AOTC and CE,
yeah,
where nobody is going to transfer to, not nobody, but like very few. It's very hard to find people that are willing to pay transfer costs to switch servers to come raid with your guild that does 5 of 9 mythic. It's a pretty
right,
big barrier of asking somebody to be like, hey, will you invest $20 in coming to join us?
yeah,
And if you can't do that, then you basically have somebody in the guild that can't participate in cross in mythic until like a month and a half, 2 months into the tier.
right,
And that basically just means that like they're -1 on your roster, and that
yeah.
sucks. So this is going to be nice for that kind of upper end heroic where you get through heroic pretty quickly, and then you can start working on mythic, and you can actually have people join you, and you can pug people, and you can like
Oh yeah. No, it'll make recruiting so much easier. Even for I'd say like guilds like mine, right? Like the idea of being like if someone comes from off server and we're like, we'd love to trial, we don't really have a spot, but we'd love to trial you, like rather than have them spend the money to transfer over to like join, like even if this is like earlier on the tier, like
yeah,
then it's just nice that they can just join and do that. Or just like I said, I think for us, like we have a bunch of people who play alliance characters too. So it's like they're kind of already in the guild, um, but their alliance like on in our case Mal'Ganis, which is like there's no alliance on Mal'Ganis. So like it's a very weird situation. But
yeah,
no, it's I think this is like breaking down these barriers. I think makes sense for the game nowadays because it's just like there's the problem I think that most games have when they implement this sort of like faction or like sides perspective is that there will always be it's sort of like a snowball effect where one side gains a slight advantage early and then everyone moves to the side that has the advantage. And
yep,
there's so much information out there that like if you even casually follow a game, like you will be like regardless of what the game is, you'll be like Google like what is the best faction in this MMO, and somebody be like, well, this one has the most population, so you go there, right? And any new player that comes in will we're kind of trained to do that, like playing games nowadays is like Google it and Google will tell you what the best thing to do is. So
yeah,
yeah, and I think this is really cool to have them implement. So
yeah. This is this is going to be good, and it's just like we've talked about very little in terms of like game system stuff, but one of the things
yeah,
kind of to end cap us, one of the things that Morgan Day in the deep dive said over and over and over and over was evergreen permanent systems, like
yeah,
bringing things that they're like, this is not going to be like islands that was abandoned after an expansion, or warfronts that was abandoned after half of a patch, or
yeah, exactly.
Torghast, or
Yeah,
any of these things. It's they're trying to build things that are like Mythic Plus to stand the test of time and that they can keep building and iterating on and working on. Um, so yeah, that's all really exciting. The actual thing that I actually want to actually end on, uh, we're doing more predictions.
Okay.
More predictions.
Oh Jesus. Wasn't
We
set up for this.
I'm pulling up. Yeah, you're being set up is what's happening.
Oh God.
I've pulled up the hero specs list. So this is the list of the hero talent trees that can be on. There are 3 per class. We're not going to talk about demon hunters or druids. And the way it works is that every one of
No.
these hero specs is available to 2 actual like main specs of your class. So the monk ones, each one of these is like one of them is available to Windwalker and Brewmaster. One of them is available to Brewmaster or Mistweaver, and one is available to Mistweaver and Windwalker. Predictions: which one's which?
Oh no. So I think Condo to the Celestials. Oh no. Okay, so Condo to the Celestials, I'm saying is going to be Mistweaver and Windwalker.
Okay.
So that's my prediction there. So then we need
There's
so
Master of
then Mist.
Harmony and Shadowpan.
Yeah, so Master of Harmony. So I'm gonna go on a limb here. I think Master of Harmony is going to be Windwalker and Brewmaster, which I know is not the popular opinion in the community.
Okay.
And I think Shadowpan will be or no, I lied. I mean, I need to change that. Condo of Celestials is Mistweaver and Brewmaster, and then
Okay.
Shadowpan is Mistweaver and Windwalker.
Okay. And that means
That's
Master of
popular.
Harmony would be
Windwalker,
Windwalker,
Brewmaster.
Brewmaster. Okay. That's
Yes,
spicy. I hope you wrote that down.
I did. I added it. I'll put it in our notes so we have
Nice,
it.
nice,
Yeah.
nice.
Yes.
Um,
What
cool.
about you?
All right.
What are
So
your
I'm a
predictions?
little bit driven by this is like results oriented thinking. Like I want it to be a certain way, which is
Yeah.
specifically I don't want the Celestials one to be the Brewmaster one.
Okay. Fair. Okay. So that makes it pretty easy for what you want that one to be.
So that one, Mistweaver Windwalker.
Okay.
And then I think Master of Harmony is going to be Mistweaver Brewmaster.
Okay.
Although I could go either way on that one, honestly. Um,
Okay.
I just think Master of Harmony always going to include Mistweaver, basically. Like I'm confident that one has Mistweaver in it.
Oh, okay. Confident.
Um, and then Shadowpan I think is going to be Brewmaster Woodwalker.
Okay. Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. I like that. Well, I've written these down, so I think we'll have to wait a little bit till we get those
Yeah,
details. But
we have
um,
the alpha for this. They said was going to be in the spring, which
yep.
typically is going to mean probably like March is generally considered the beginning of spring. I don't know if
Yeah.
they're using financial calendar where like spring is
Second
Q1
quarter, or yeah,
or
Q1.
if they mean like actual spring.
Yeah.
So we will see. We will see. But that is going to be it for the show today. Thank you all for watching and or listening. And if you enjoyed it and you want to support the show and the work that we do over on Peak of Serenity, you can do that over at our Patreon at patreon.com/Peak of Serenity. And of course, come and join the Discord. It is the best place to speculate wildly about
Of
what
course,
we are
of
going to
course.
get in the next expansion. We have no information, as a reminder, no information on what is actually in these hero talent trees.
Not a clue.
Um,
Zero clue.
so that remains to be seen.
Yes.
But yeah, it's fun times. Everybody's excited. And not only is there new expansion news, there's of course new raid stuff, and it is
Great stuff.
come join the Discord. Great place to keep up on all the new talent stuff, new rotational stuff that is currently being figured out. For I think every spec. I think
Yeah.
Windwalker is maybe more solidified than Brewmaster or Mistweaver, but yeah,
Yeah. We're getting it locked in. We have trinket hotfixes still, so
yeah,
we have at
that's
least one
true.
more day
That's
to all those
true.
going. So we'll figure that out in the next
Kate
24
is
hours.
still doing some serious sim work for Brewmaster. Uh,
Nice, nice.
so yeah, yeah, but yeah.
Always fun. Always fun.
That's it for today. Thank you all for listening, and we will see you next week.
Bye.